They're covered in tattoos, ride big noisy bikes and travel in packs. They've cultivated an image designed to terrify. Mention outlaw bikie gangs like the Hells Angels, Finks and Gypsy Jokers, and many people automatically associate them with drugs, guns and violence, which suits the police and some politicians. In South Australia's current election campaign, both sides are promising to intensify a 4-year war that's seen clubhouses raided and hundreds of bikies arrested. Their official rationale is that bikies are the legmen for organised crime. The bikies claim that's a myth. For our cover story this Sunday, Adam Shand ventured deep into Australia's outlaw nation to find out who's right.
They say they're the last free men, a brotherhood bound by secrecy. Outlaws. That's what defines the so-called 1% clubs. The other 99% of bikers might live to ride, but only the outlaws are committed for life.
We're the 1%, that this is our culture as far as we're concerned. We didn't join motorcycle clubs, this was our destiny.
Since the 1950s, outlaw bikies have been tagged as the principal villains in everything from drugs to murder. They don't claim to be angels, but nor are they the kings of crime of popular imagination. This is all about freedom, they say, a way of life they're determined to protect.
We won't fall to pressure. You know, our soul, our heart and soul's in this.
So why are governments here and overseas prepared to spend millions to prove the bikies are the new mafia?
The politicians, they're trying to paint a picture to squash us. And it's a pity the general public do believe politicians before they'd believe any of us.
Nothing's happening to combat the destruction of our social fabric, and that's at the end of the day what these gangs are about, destroying the very social fabric of our state.
They're a very soft target, and the government can get away with saying whatever they want to say about them without recourse.
Today we journey into Australia's outlaw nation to examine the claim that bikies are the foot soldiers for organised crime.
Well, I just know from 3.5 decades it's not true. I mean, we have a long conversation about that. Talk to those of us that are in it. Talk to those of us that certainly can't be marked off as mafia. For goodness sake, I'm a Christian minister.
The former Gypsy Jokers president vanished without a trace. His abandoned white Ford found at the Jeps Cross Hotel on June 14th.
We also tell the story of one outlaw who broke the code of silence on Adelaide's clubland and ultimately paid with his life.
Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
And we meet the most famous outlaw of them all, one of the original Hells Angels, Sonny Barger, who, after 50 years, is still riding his own carefree highway.
My personal opinion of it is, if you really want to be a criminal, you have to be a cop or a politician.
In Australia, the Finks Motorcycle Club is regarded by police and rival clubs alike as amongst the most hardcore and righteous of the outlaw world. They're renowned for finishing a conflict with a massive show of force. It's one in, all in. But in the organised crime world, they say, the Finks are strictly small time.
Things have happened in the past. It's individuals acting out individually. We don't sit in meetings and drama anything up. We don't sit there and scheme things.
Well, this is our third movie we've made.
Like most bikie groups, the Finks shun the media. They've not given an interview in 30 years. They took their name from the Wizard of Id comic strip and its famous line, "The King is a Fink." For the past 3 decades, the Finks have successfully pursued their own extreme lifestyle.
We sit down here, we crack a couple of kegs, have a bit of a barbecue, and everybody gets well and truly pissed. Then we decide to sort out our rules.
But today, in the age of terror, the right to exist as a society within a society is under challenge. Lawmakers and police in states like South Australia now regard the outlaw club as a dire threat, a nightmare blend of urban terrorist cell and organised crime gang.
I do not believe that we're dealing with the little Robin Hoods who just happen to put on black leather jackets and ride around with their colours on. I happen to believe, and so do South Australians, that these outlaw motorcycle gangs are involved in a whole range of activities, including murder, prostitution, fraud, and particularly the manufacture and distribution of amphetamines aimed at our kids.
The Gypsy Jokers do not have fortified headquarters and razor wire because they're trying to protect their gym equipment.
Next weekend, South Australians will go to the polls to elect their new state government. Law and order is the hot topic in the campaign, and bikies are cast as villain priority one. Premier Mike Rann promises to escalate his war on bikies if he's re-elected.
And I know that in politically correct circles, people don't like what we're doing. Apparently we're infringing the civil liberties of these pond scum. Well, quite frankly, I'm pleased that we are.
I would be very surprised if most of the bikies weren't directly associated with the specific criminal activity.
Robert Brokenshire was police minister in the last Liberal government. Now in opposition, he still believes every bikie has broken the law. They become a criminal simply by initiation.
They go through their initiation process to get in there. Often I'm told that part of that involves actually criminal activity directly to get it initiated in the first instance.
But you're saying by the process of initiation that anybody who's actually won a patch is by definition a criminal?
Well, that's what I'm told. Now, I haven't got absolute evidence on that. I've never been in a situation where I've witnessed their initiation process or requirements, but when you talk to people that have associated with them, that's what they're telling me. Now, of course, they don't get caught very often, so there's no real evidence of that.
The Liberals have promised to ban the clubs and double the size of Operation Avatar, the anti-bikie task force, to smash the outlaws once and for all. So who are these bikers who strike fear in the hearts of politicians? Bill Dutton has been a Fink for 35 years. A roo shooter and drover from Western Queensland, Dutton was one of the originals. 16 travelling farm workers and bridge builders. Now, in his mid-50s, he says he will always be an outlaw. No politician can turn him into a criminal to get themselves elected. What do you think the future is for the Brotherhood, the movement, the clubs?
Forever. Okay, how can... What? What? Going to give up what my grandfather died for and my father fought for? Am I going to give that up? They fought for me to be able to do what I do.
Robbie did 3 years jail for an assault he says he didn't commit. While he admits his checkered past, he didn't join the Finks to become a gangster.
I swore as a child that I was in search of brotherhood and unity, because all I could see in the world, was back when I was a child was actual terrorism and public uncertainty and problems with government, etc. And I felt like this was the last stance of a true democracy.
Brenton has also done time in jail. Now, as the Sergeant-at-Arms of a Finks chapter in Adelaide, he's responsible for law and order in his club. While a criminal record is no barrier to entry, the clubs operate on a strict ethical code.
If a member of our club sold drugs to kids, I'd hate to see what would happen to him by us. What we would do to him.
So just how much of a threat do bikies pose to the social order of South Australia? Avatar's track record suggests the clubs are criminal havens. In 4 years, the 20-strong squad has made nearly 300 arrests and seized a small mountain of illicit drugs, guns and black money. A further 284 bikie associates have also been arrested. But ask how many bikies have actually been locked up and there is less certainty.
As I understand it, the success rate is reasonable, but I couldn't give you an exact figure of relating to those particular arrests as to which had resulted in convictions or not.
Is it relevant to ask how many convictions you've actually achieved out of those arrests?
You can talk to the police about that. They can give you the figures.
But surely that's a measure of success. And I've actually asked the police. They can't tell me.
Well,
the opposition can't tell me.
Well, they're prosecuting.
And the government can tell me.
These are the figures that I've got in terms of arrests and charges and everything else. But I'm very happy to ask the police to give you those figures.
What part of the approach to organised crime is actually trying to dismantle structures and reduce effectiveness of those structures to operate.
South Australia Police justify their disruption and harassment of the outlaw clubs on the basis they are organised crime gangs. Therefore, each member of the club, or any associate for that matter, can be deemed a criminal suspect. Charlie, another Fink Sergeant-at-Arms, has no criminal record and has never been arrested, but he's frequently raided.
We tend to get used to it. It's mainly when your kids are around, I can't stand it because they don't understand what's going on, why their bedroom's being torn apart, and that's what sucks the most in my eyes. It's the sort of thing that you can't erase from their memory.
And South Australia's politicians are eager to give the police yet more powers.
It's one of those swings in political history throughout the Western world where the politics of fear have driven away any semblance or modicum of reasonable debate. You simply push the fear button and the votes follow.
And we are the only government that I can find in the world that's been prepared to come down hard on outlaw motorcycle gangs with a series of legislative measures.
But it's fair to ask just how have the existing powers been used in South Australia to date? In 2004, the Rann government gave police the power to seek the demolition of the so-called bikie fortresses, a legacy of interclub conflict in the 1980s and 90s. Despite this power, unique among Western democracies, not a single fortress has been breached so far. Only one application has yet been lodged, against a private residence owned by a member of the Hells Angels.
If you believe the bikies, then you believe that they run knitting circles inside their fortified premises. I don't believe that, and neither do the public.
I have no idea what goes through his mind. I don't know. You know, they were talking about the fortification laws, so here's a key to the clubhouse, come anytime you want. It's not fortified anymore. We can't do more than give you a key to the front door.
But are these clubs primarily a vehicle for crime? Over Christmas, Avatar conducted raids on a number of outlaw premises, but no charges were laid, despite the frequent assertion the clubhouses serve as headquarters for crime.
There is not a shard of evidence to support that.
Professor Arthur Vino has studied the outlaw bike clubs for 20 years. It's hard work, academic sources are non-existent, and the bikies rarely talk. But there's no support for the idea of a growing bikie menace.
Criminal activity in the clubs is normally minor compared to what is going on in, say, a designated crime organization such as the Russian mafia, such as the Lebanese mafia, etc., etc. It goes on and on.
Furniture was upturned and shots fired at the Music Awards on Monday night after up to 7 men stormed the building in front of hundreds of shocked guests.
There have been outbreaks of open warfare amongst bikies. Shots were fired at last year's Adelaide Dance Music Awards as Hells Angels and Rebels clashed. But according to Melvin Mansell, the editor of the Adelaide Advertiser newspaper, major crime involving the clubs is a rarity in South Australian courts.
And governments and police tell you that bikie groups are very heavily involved in organised crime, and I think in particularly amphetamines and other drugs, probably particularly marijuana. Conversely, what you are seeing is that there doesn't appear to be any empirical evidence through the courts, for example, with successful prosecutions, that this is indeed the case.
The God Squad are the 1%ers of the Christian world. They marry the bikers, christen their children and bury the dead. President Dr. John Smith says the pursuit of outlaw bike clubs is purely cosmetic. The real threats to the social fabric lie elsewhere.
You know, if you want to really know where the power that corrupts this society is, start looking for some pedophile judges start looking for some corrupt pollies. I'm not saying there aren't some people that misbehave in the bike scene, but they're in every part of society, including, sadly, in the priesthood, doing it with little boys.
So if, as the clubs argue, they're not criminal gangs, then just what is an outlaw in 2006? For most of their history, the Finks have been loud, ugly and drunk, but violence has usually been contained. Here, in this artillery game from the 1970s, they posed a greater risk to each other than the public.
Get all three of them going together. Stay forward. Now.
Number one's away.
Two's away, three's away. Three's away.
Unlike most outlaw clubs, the Finks have a loose structure based on the equality of members.
We just have a treasurer and a sergeant of arms. Each man, he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to work or if he wants to do some other living, it's up to him. He's making his own destiny. The sergeant of arms in our club is to keep law and order and peace amongst ourselves. We don't have a president telling us what to do.
The most multicultural of clubs, nearly every race is represented in the Finks. Muslims mix with Christians, tribalists and the utterly godless. All are welcome if they pass muster as nominees.
It takes time to know who people are. 12 months of watching who you got with you. If he's an idiot, he's just got to go. You know, we don't want someone out there causing dramas every week. It's too hard. But the majority of the blokes are, you know, working blokes, family members. It's not all thuggery.
Finks from all over Australia are today converging on Mildura in Western Victoria for the massed run back into Adelaide. They say a national run is no crime convention, but a rare chance to celebrate the unity of the club. This is an optional run, and some interstaters have stayed home, unwilling to wear the police attention they will attract in South Australia.
Why would you want to come into a town where you're going to be defected and harassed? Really, they're not looking forward to it. So, can't blame them really, can you?
Half a dozen interstaters have already received defect notices en route for breaching noise limits. The yellow defect sticker, or canary, is the quickest way to break up a run. Canaried bikers have 72 hours to get their machines off the road.
This riding's just getting too hard. It's just getting, you know, it's not like it used to be where you just cruise in and cruise out. So it's getting to the stage where everyone's going to start flying, I think. Then they'll go up at the airport anyway and annoy you there. So you can't win. We can't win.
But this morning the Finks have slipped the dragnet and are cruising eastwards through farmlands and small towns. The route has been a well-kept secret. There's been no chatter over mobile phones or in the clubhouse, avoiding Avatar's electronic surveillance. Eventually, local police pick up the scent, and the unmarked Avatar cars dispatched from Adelaide join the parade.
Just trying to be friendly with us, trying to find out where we're going, what our destination is. Just, grabbing the number plates, finding out who's leaving town, who's coming back to town. Just procedure.
Filming you all the time and this sort of
business?
Yeah,
that's part of it, being filmed, yeah.
They're wusses, they're bloody, Geez, I wish the old blokes would come back and just beat me, for God's sake, than this bloody shit they're doing nowadays.
You're taking a beating.
Wasting taxpayers' money. Old sergeant could have done. What old sergeant could have done all this? On a push bike.
In the mid-1970s, when bikie numbers were more than double today's count, policing was a local affair. Common sense was more important than a show of strength.
Bad news. Don't be drinking out here in the pubs, if you will. A good fellow, suppose. I know. All boils down to this. You don't make work for me, I don't make it for you. That's all we want, isn't it?
But with police and politicians cracking down on bikies, their days seem to be numbered. As society's tolerance narrows, these self-styled outcasts represent the sum of all fears.
Basic human rights are being traded off against security of an extreme sort for a now traumatised and frightened public. And it's an easy break for those that are extreme right-wingers, for those that are almost neo-fascist in their attitude towards society. There are a whole bunch of people for whom this is a great day.
After the break, we'll look at the mysterious disappearance of outspoken bikie Steve Horrible Williams and meet the man who Hunter S. Thompson immortalised in his book on the Hells Angels in part 2 of our cover story. After the break.
If you want to be a criminal, you do not want to be a Hells Angel. Do you think you could get away with anything illegal for very long?